everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a TBR check-in and book haul. And I'm coming at you in my Friday afternoon after a long work week, wiped out look. So yeah, just bear with me if I stumble and mumble because it has been an extremely long week. But I'm really excited to film this TBR check-in and book haul, because it was an exciting month in the world of book hauls. Not so great for TBR check-ins. So let's just get to it. So in the month of April, I read a total of 16 books, which sounds great. But unfortunately, only 4 of those were off my shelves. And I did have 2 unhauls to talk about. But I brought in... Look at that. I brought in 29 books. So that leaves me with a plus 23 for the month of April, which brings my TBR up to 138. We started the year at 120, folks. So 138. I have gone severely back in the other direction, but I'm not sad about it, and I will explain why. So first, before we get into the new books, I want to talk about the 2 books that I did unhaul, both of which are mass market paperbacks, both of which are fantasy books that I just don't think I'm interested in anymore. The first one is this one, The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. This is book 1 in a trilogy that I don't even remember the name of. I tried to read this a while ago and got like maybe 75 pages into it, and it was just not anything I was interested in for me at this point. So I'm just going to let that one go. And then I also have The Thief by J.R. Ward. This is a book far into an urban fantasy series that I really used to be into, the Black Dagger Brotherhood. But again, I just really have gotten out of... I just have not wanted to read urban fantasy for a while. I do have 1 or 2 series that I'm still really invested in for urban fantasy. This is not one of them, so I'm going to let this one go. So 2 mass markets out of the house. Now I also have my first 2 new books I'm going to talk about. I read in the month of April. So these are 2 of the 4 books off my shelf that I read last month. And they're both for the Book2 prize. So that's Islands of Abandonment, Life in the Post-Human Landscape by Flynn. That was one of the books I had to read for the Book2 prize. And All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days, The True Story of an American Woman at the Heart of the German Resistance to Hitler by Rebecca Donner. Also read this one. So those 2 books I brought in the month of April, and I also read in the month of April. Now, I have 27 more books to talk to you about that I brought in the month of April. So let's just get to it. The first one is a book that I will be reading in the month of May because it is the Book Naturalist Book Club pick and the group read for Springathon this year. This is Small Bodies of Water by Nina Mingya Powles. I've talked about this quite a bit on my TBR for Springathon and also in my Book Naturalist, my last Book Naturalist video. So this book will be read in the month of May. I also picked up a used book. It is Pale Rider, The Spanish Flu of 1918 and How It Changed the World by Laura Spinney. I've had this one on my wish list for quite a long time, even before the pandemic, because I read The Great Influenza a couple of years ago and loved that book. It was so good. And I wanted to read more about the 1918 flu. And this was a book that had been recommended to me. I just had not been able to find a copy of it. So I did find a used copy at my the bookstore that I use, the independent bookstore that I most often use, and I just couldn't resist, so I had to grab it. So I will be picking this one up to read very soon, I believe, because I've wanted to read it for so long. I then purchased a book by a favorite author of mine, who you've heard me talk about a lot before on this channel, and that's David George Haskell. I loved his previous 2 books that I read. This is his brand new book that just came out about a month ago, and this is Sounds Wild and Broken, Sonic Marvels, Evolution's Creativity, and the Crisis of Sensory Extinction. And I really don't know what this one's about. I bought it specifically because I love this author. I love the way he writes about the natural world, and I am just convinced that I will love anything that he writes, so I had to get it. And then I won a book. Stephanie over at A Time to Read had a giveaway of this book, Brickmakers by Selva, Almada, translated from the Spanish by Andy McDermott. And this sounds like a sort of retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but the two lovers are a gay couple. So I just thought it sounded wonderful when Stephanie talked about it on her channel. So I entered her giveaway and I won it. So I'm very excited. I have not read very much translated work at all this year yet in 2022. So I am really hoping to fix that and read more translated stuff during the rest of the year. So this will help with that goal. Now, I received an early Mother's Day gift from my husband. I was recommended by one of you viewers that I should look into the Penguin Green Ideas collection. And so I did look into it, and I sent a link to my husband and said, you know what I'd like to have is the Penguin Green Idea collection of 20 books. And my husband very kindly bought them for me, ordered them from Blackwell's, had them shipped all the way from the UK. They arrived early, unexpectedly. I was home, he was not, and I was like, I don't know, Eddie got some package, and he took one look at it when he got home, and he's like, I think that one's for you. And I'm like, I didn't order anything. And I opened it up, and it was, in fact, the Penguin Green Ideas collection of 20 different nonfiction little books like this, all about environmental ideas, issues, all written by different people. So this first one, this is number 1. No One is Too Small to Make a Difference by Greta Thunberg. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, who is, of course, the Swedish activist young lady who has led the student walkouts to protest the fact that nobody is taking enough action to combat climate change. So yeah, this is a collection of her speeches that she has given over the last several years. And so each of the books in this collection, and there are 20 of them, is a little slim volume like this, and it is about a different environmental idea. I have actually already read one of them, and that is this one. This is The Most Damned Country in the World by Dai Ching. And this is a Chinese author. She has been campaigning against the Three Gorges Dam since the 1980s. And this is a collection of speeches and essays that she's written about that dam project in China. And I thought this was just really fascinating. Had never heard of this author before or this activist before. And so I was really pleased to have read this one already. This is number 11 in the collection. And I am currently reading Uncanny and Improbable Events by Amitav Ghosh. And this is really interesting because, of course, Amitav Ghosh is a famous author, a novelist. And in this collection, it's an exploration of why literary fiction doesn't really address climate change issues. And his thesis is that if a book talks about climate change, it gets stuffed into genre. It gets called dystopian, or it gets called science fiction, or something else, horror. And so, like, what people consider literary fiction doesn't address climate change, which is like the biggest topic of our current times. This is I think an excerpt from a larger publication that came out in 2016 called The Great Derangement, which was a University of Chicago press book. So this is his sort of essay, I think, for that collection. And I am like 34 pages into this 100-page essay, and I'm finding it just really, really thought-provoking. So yeah, lots of great things to ponder and think about from this collection already. Some of the authors that are in here are Naomi Klein, Bill McKibben, Terry Tempest Williams, Michael Pollan, Robin Wall Kimmerer, Jared Diamond, Wendell Berry, Edward O. Wilson, who I just read, Rachel Carson, Aldo Leopold, and others that I am unfamiliar with. And it comes in this lovely little slipcase. There is, if you want to stop the video and pause, there's the list of the titles and authors. And I'm just so pleased, so pleased to have this collection. Of course, added 20 titles to my TBR, which is why this month was so particularly bad for the numbers on my TBR. But I do hope to read several of these each month for the next couple of months. So I don't think it will take me that long to get through it. And then last but not least, my last 3 books came from a visit that I made to an independent bookstore for Independent Bookstore Day, which was last Saturday, April 30th. I happened to be in New Hampshire for a wedding, and we were staying in a hotel in Manchester, New Hampshire, and just about a block away from our hotel was the Bookery, which is an independent bookstore. And I had a few hours to kill before the wedding, and I convinced my niece and my husband to go with me down to the Bookery to see what they had. And it was the cutest little bookstore. And in the back of the bookstore was a coffee shop, place for pastries, and they also sold beer. And so my husband was thrilled, and he thinks that all bookshops should have beer sold in them, because then if you're not interested in browsing the books, you can at least sit and have a beer. But so he was pleased, and I was pleased, and my niece was pleased because she wanted to go book shopping as well. So what I purchased in that bookstore was Winter Pasture, One Woman's Journey with China's Kazakh Herders by Li Yan. And this is not an author I've ever heard of before. She is a writer. And I just have to read you this little section of the blurb because I think this just sounds amazing. Li Yan and her mother own a small convenience store in the Altai Mountains in northwestern China. To her neighbor's surprise, Li decides to join a family of Kazakh herders as they take their 30 boisterous camels, 500 sheep, and over 100 cattle and horses to pasture for the winter. The so-called winter pasture occurs in a remote region that stretches from the Alunga River to the Heavenly Mountains. As she journeys across the vast, seemingly endless sand dunes, she helps herd sheep, chases after camels, builds an underground home using sheep manure, gathers snow for water, all the while chronicling conversations, events, and the ever-changing landscape. I mean, I don't know anything that's more up my alley than this book right here. Plus, it has a beautiful cover. Plus, it was something I had not heard of before. And so I just am really curious to read this and see what this is all about. This traveling across this landscape that I've never heard of, never known anything about, what it would be like to travel with herders and have to tend livestock. She's a writer and not a farmer, so it's going to be interesting, like fish out of water type situation where how is she going to contend with this type of activity and environment that she's not used to, all the while doing stuff that's really not what young unmarried women in China are really meant to be doing. So yeah, really fascinated by this. And because I bought this and I bought my grandson a little board book about Rachel Carson, which I don't have with me right at the moment, I hit a certain threshold level of purchasing, which meant I could pick a free book off a cart, which had a bunch of ARCs on it. So ARCs are advanced reader copies, and they had this whole 3-shelf cart that you could pick from. And I picked for my free book All In, which is the autobiography of Billie Jean King, the famous tennis player. And I have heard really, really good things about this. First from Patrice Jones, one of my favorite buddy readers and personal friend, and she read this and really enjoyed it. And then I've heard other folks who had to read it for the BookTube Prize talk about it and how surprised they were at how much they liked it. I'm not a tennis person. I do not follow tennis. I don't really know very much about tennis. And in fact, I took tennis twice in college for my PE credit. And after the second go around with beginner's tennis, my tennis instructor said, "Heidi, I don't think you better take tennis anymore. You really aren't very good at it." And she was right. I was terrible at it. So yeah, but I am really fascinated to learn about Billie Jean King herself and her life and her role as sort of a feminist leader and a role, what's the word I want? trendsetter or a person who broke barriers for women in sports. So I'm excited to have a copy of that. The other thing I got to do at the bookstore was they had this wheel that you could spin. It was like the Wheel of Fortune wheel, or like the wheel on, yeah, it was more like the Wheel of Fortune wheel, or you've seen it like on Price is Right or whatever, where you have this wheel and you spin it and there's different categories on it and you win a prize depending on which category you land on. So I spun the wheel and I got a $5 off coupon. And it was a coupon that you could only spend in the store. And since I was not from that town and I was not going to be back to that store, I had to spend the coupon right then. So I was like, well, I'll just go pick out another book and spend it right now, which I did. And I picked up this nonfiction, The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia by Masha Gessen. So I read Masha Gessen's book. There was a book of theirs that I read for the BookTube Prize last year called, I've forgotten the name of it. It was about autocracy anyway, and really enjoyed their writing style. And so this book has been very famous. It won, it was a National Book Award winner, and it's really gotten a lot of press. So I was interested in this one as well. So I grabbed this one with my $5 coupon, and I'm really pleased to try another Masha Gessen book. So because she's really well-known, they are really well-known expert for their knowledge about Russia, and it seems like a good time to be reading and understanding more about Russia and the history of totalitarianism in that country. So yeah, that is it for my book haul. It's quite extensive in the month of April. So yeah, I just blew my budget, right? I blew my balance for my TBR, but, I'm really not sorry about it at all because I am thrilled to have each and every one of these books in my possession. Like I said, I hope to be reading quite a few of them in the next month or in the next coming months. And, yeah, I'm just really happy to have them all in my home with me now, even though it did really shoot my numbers way up, and I'm gonna have to work really hard to get it back down to where I was when I started at the beginning of the year. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That sounds a little bit more right for me and my TBR. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.